On today's Solo Sunday News, a mystery faction debuts at NXT Vengeance Day. A title change takes place at Vengeance Day. Jordynne Grace appears at Vengeance Day. And Toni Storm wins gold as AEW confirms its Australia return. Hello and welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling, the Solo Sunday News. Myself, Andrew Pollard. I hope you're well, I hope you're good, and I hope your weekend is going as well as possible. Okay. With a couple of big shows taking place this weekend, let's start things off with NXT and NXT Vengeance Day. More specifically, let's start things off with the arrival of the mystery faction that's been teased on TV for the past few weeks. Now, for those who've maybe not kept up with NXT lately, the past few episodes have seen brief videos air that show, I guess you call it silhouettes of a group of people with masks. And that group has now made its presence felt, appearing at Vengeance Day to take out Fraxium, Josh Briggs, and Yoshiki Inamura. This coming after Fraxium retained their NXT tag team titles. And the two teams, they kind of shared, a show of respect in the ring. Out of nowhere, four masked men hit the ring, with Corey Graves identifying one of them as Dion Lennox. I think he might have mentioned Cutler James as well by name. And Vic Joseph, he questioned what the group's motives were as they laid out Fraser, Axiom, Josh Briggs, Inamura. That same four would then turn up later in the night, attacking Oba Femi after he'd retained the NXT title against Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, which, to be fair, that is a pretty big deal. It's not often you see anyone getting the better of Obafemi. So it was quite the sight to see the ruler of NXT laid to waste by these four men. As for the four men themselves, as mentioned, Dion Lennox is the one whose name was mentioned the most. He'd also later take to social media to post a picture of the four masks. Cutler James, Saquon Shaguz, and Osiris Griffin. They make up the rest of the group, all being Performance Center athletes, with Dion Lennox the only one really to get any NXT TV time, at least on the main NXT show anyway. In fact, Dion Lennox, if you go back a little while, he previously had a little backstage interaction with Obafemi where he said one day he would come after that NXT title. A little bit of foreshadowing, dare you say? I mean, could that day be sooner than we all thought? I mean, if you take out the NXT champion in such an impactful way and on such a big stage for NXT, I mean, it's not like it's WrestleMania, but Vengeance Day is one of their big events. That kind of surely puts you immediately into the title picture, It's a little like, I mean, again, on a far smaller scale, but it's a little like how the Nexus made their mark on WWE, taking out John Cena and CM Punk, Justin Roberts, anyone at ringside for that matter. But the point being that immediately put Wade Barrett, the leader of the group, into the main event picture. So if Dion Lennox is the leader of this group, that could do the same for him, only, again, on the smaller scale of NXT rather than on the main roster, of course. Although, maybe Dion Lennox isn't the leader of this group. Maybe someone else is calling shots and Dion Lennox is simply the one we're most familiar with. Or maybe there is no leader. Maybe it's four equals. Either way, though, the way the NXT commentary team sold this and the way WWE has been pushing this on social media since this group's arrival was kind of like the second coming of the Shield or Nexus, as in this was supposed to feel like a big deal. I mean, taking out the NXT tag champs and the NXT champ, yep. That is certainly one way to make an impact. Speaking of making an impact, Stephanie Vaquer. Yes, Stephanie Vaquer has constantly impressed since landing in WWE last year. And now, Stephanie Vaquer is your new NXT Women's North American Champion, defeating Fallon Henley at Vengeance Day with the Spinal Tap finish. Of course, this marks Vaquer's first title under the WWE banner, and it just continues the momentum she's had since she arrived last summer. What was it, July? And it was seen as quite the get last July, because at that point in time, before that anyway, at least, it seemed nailed on that Stephanie Vaquer was set to head to AEW. And then WWE just kind of swooped in, signed her up to a deal, immediately debuted her. Literally, it felt like it was a couple of days later at a Mexico Live event. And then just since then, I mean, Stephanie's just, absolutely been killing it. Made her on-screen debut in NXT. I think it was September. There was that quick video that aired. And then there was the in-ring debut for NXT the following month. Kind of soon had that allegiance with Julia, I guess you could say, a friendship there on screen. And then earlier this month, you had both Stephanie Vaquer and Julia in the Women's Royal Rumble. And both, you kind of look at those ladies and they seemingly are marked for superstardom in the future. And rightly so, because I mean, both of them are just ridiculously talented. And now Stephanie Vaquer's momentum has continued with the North American title, which I believe makes her the first South American wrestler to ever win a title under the WWE banner, I believe. I probably should have checked that before I came on there. But yeah, speaking of NXT titles, and speaking of Julia, just then. The Beautiful Madness, she closed out Vengeance Day in the main event by retaining the NXT Women's title in a four-way match, with Julia hitting the Northern Lights bomb on Roxanne Perez to get the 1, 2, 3. Now, firstly, when I'm looking at this, that surely marks the end of Roxanne's time with NXT. I mean, she's been rumored for, it feels like a year or more now with the main roster call-up, and especially more in recent weeks and months. And I mean, of course, there was unfortunately a bunch of WWE releases a couple of weeks ago, but part of the reason given for that was it was attributed to making space essentially for NXT call-ups. And when you look at possible NXT call-ups, Roxanne just seems like, yeah, an absolute shoe-in to be moving imminently. For me, I'd guess she heads to Raw, so that then Roxanne can continue that rivalry with Bayley. I mean, I even said it on one of these videos last year, I think it was, that as and when Roxanne makes her way to the main roster, Bayley would be an ideal first rivalry for her. Also, an NXT talent isn't getting to the final two of the Royal Rumble, putting in like an hour, and what was it, an hour and 7 minutes, if they're not going to be called up ASAP. So yes, with Roxanne Perez taking the pin at Vengeance Day, you have to imagine that's it for Roxy in NXT. At least I'd say we're in the very, very final stretches of Roxy's time in NXT. But while Roxanne Perez's time with NXT is up, or will be soon, the bigger talking point here, coming out of Vengeance Day, was a surprise appearance from Jordynne Grace. Now, recent reports stated how Grace was set to have a short run in NXT before heading to the main roster. I mean, Jordynne signed with the company just earlier this year, just after her after a TNA deal expired a couple of weeks ago, and now the Juggernaut has made her presence known at Vengeance Day. There, after Julia had picked up the win, she was joined in the ring by Stephanie Vaquer. The two of them held up their respective titles in the air. The show's kind of credits popped up on the screen at the bottom of the screen. And then Jordynne Grace's music hit, and Thick Mama Pump headed to the ring and had a bit of a stare down with the two champions. It was all very friendly, it was all very cordial, but it was also like, I'm here. I want some of that gold. So yeah, I mean, Jordynne Grace versus Stephanie Vaquer, sign me up. Jordynne Grace versus Julia, sign me up. Again, those recent reports say that Jordynne signed a multi-year main roster deal, so any time in NXT is not expected to be particularly lengthy. And while you could absolutely drop her on Raw or SmackDown like tomorrow, right now it probably does make sense for Jordynne Grace to have a bit of time in NXT. I mean, don't get it wrong. Jordynne Grace, one of the best female wrestlers on the planet, one of the best wrestlers on the planet, period. An absolute beast between the ropes, phenomenal look, a very solid talker. But it's that awkward time of the year now where, I mean, you've got WrestleMania on the horizon and there's only so many spots available for people to be spotlighted. So if your WrestleMania plans don't quite have room for a Jordynne Grace right now, you could absolutely give her a couple of months in NXT where she can get that spotlight, where she can be used in a major way, where she can get a major match in front of a big crowd at, you know, say Stand and Deliver WrestleMania weekend. I mean, you could easily have had Jordynne Grace win the Royal Rumble, put her against Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. I'd have been very fine with that. And I'm sure a match with Rhea will happen at some point in the near future. But for now, NXT might be the best place to use Jordynne for a few months, especially, I mean, you look at the main roster right now and the women's divisions. You've got the main focus on Tiffany Stratton, Charlotte Flair. You've got Rhea Ripley versus whoever coming out of the Elimination Chamber. For me, I'm thinking Rhea, it's probably a triple threat at WrestleMania. Maybe Liv Morgan wins a chamber. Maybe Io Sky, that's not going away. Io Sky and Rhea Ripley, there's something there. And I think maybe it's a triple threat there. But that's the point, that there's the two big focuses there on those matches at WrestleMania. You've got the mystery behind Jade Cargill's attacker and how that plays out in terms of WrestleMania. Potentially, you've got Bayley and Roxanne Perez doing something. And then maybe you see Becky Lynch return before WrestleMania. I mean, Becky versus Lyra Valkyria, that to me is an obvious option if Becky is back for WrestleMania. So the point is here, if Jordynne Grace, if she gets to steal the show in NXT for the next few months against people like Julia and Stephanie Vaquer, yeah, that is all absolutely fine with me. Now, sticking with champions, I mentioned Julia there, Stephanie Vaquer, but changing gears a little and switching to AEW, and Toni Storm, timeless Toni Storm, is once again your AEW Women's Champion. Now, given that the show was taped on Saturday, Australian time, there were plenty of spoilers online for this before it actually aired. I mean, it's on Triller TV here. That's how I caught up with it this morning. But yes, as many had predicted, Toni Storm defeated Mariah May at Grand Slam Australia to become the first ever four-time AEW Women's Champion. The match, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun in this match, although yes, the finishing sequence for me, I will be that old man who shouts at the sky at finishing moves, just being redundant these days. But yeah, Toni hit the Storm Zero. Mariah immediately rolled to the outside. It's like, sell it a little bit, please. I don't know. Then a few moments later, Mariah hit her own Storm Zero, and then Toni rolled her up with a small package for the 1, 2, 3. I like the small package win, but I just wish, sometimes moves like the Storm Zero was sold a little more. But I know I'm in the minority these days. It is what it is. While Toni Storm is your new AEW Women's Champion, though, another story coming out of Grand Slam is that AEW has confirmed it will be returning to Australia in 2026. Now, no further details were given, no dates, no venue, no city. But yes, AEW will be back in Oz at some point next year, some point in 2026. Now, I did get a chuckle out of the video doing the rounds on social media about this. There's a video where Toni Storm was not heavily booed. Tony Khan was heavily booed by the Brisbane crowd. He came out and he did his usual, the usual speech. I don't want to call it a rah-rah speech, but just the thanking the fans for being there, bigging up AEW. That was a great show. All that. The one where he shouts really loudly and awkwardly. Yes, one of those. And the crowd, at least with the videos I've seen anyway, I mean, that might not be a fair reflection, but the videos I saw, the crowd booed the hell out of Toni. But that crowd also then changed its tune. Like, as soon as Toni announced that AEW would be back in Australia in 2026, then it's massive cheers. So, yeah. I mean, of course, a lot of Australian fans were left... what's the word? Should we say frustrated, I guess, with AEW and Toni? I mean, what was initially a big stadium show at Sun Club Stadium, a stadium that can hold 50,000 plus, was moved to the vastly smaller Brisbane Entertainment Centre. And again, AEW, it was never stated outright that this would be a pay-per-view. But it was kind of alluded to. People kind of took that as this is going to be a big stadium show, a pay-per-view, blah, 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 blah. But instead it was, a TV special, which was fine. The show itself I had a lot of fun with it, like I said. But the move itself, that wasn't really the problem per se, but more people had spent hundreds of dollars on tickets for Sun Club Stadium, and they were then given inferior seats at the new venue. They weren't able to get refunds if they wanted to, which that is not an AEW issue. That is a ticketing issue. That's the ticketing company. But it isn't a great look for AEW though either, because they are tied to that. Also, those people who spent hundreds of dollars on tickets, not to mention flights, hotels, whatever, they were then seeing AEW selling tickets 2 for 1 in the weeks leading up to the event. So it's like, right, I've dropped $400, but now someone's paying $200 and getting 2 tickets. Okay. The point being, some of those in attendance for Grand Slam were not that happy at AEW, and they let Tony Khan know about it. But yeah, those boos, again, they soon changed to cheers. You change your tune, Australia, once Tony announced that AEW will be back in Oz next year. So let's just hope that return is handled way better than the 2025 show. As it got to the point where it felt like AEW just wanted Grand Slam to be over with, like, just get it done. We'll go over there, we'll run the event, we'll get it done, then we can focus on Revolution. I mean, it was barely advertised or even mentioned until maybe 2 weeks before the event. But yes, AEW will be back in Australia next year. Timeless Toni Storm is your new AEW Women's Champion 4 times. And with that, that brings today's solo Sunday news to a close. This has been What Culture Wrestling. I'm Nigel Pollard. Be sure to check out this other excellent video that's floating around here somewhere. And I will catch you next weekend.